Hello and welcome to this live painting demo this Tuesday night. I do live demos every Tuesday night, or all the ones that I can, and I am painting this painting of Alexandra tonight. I did another painting of her back a couple months ago, and that was a really wonderful photo. This photo is really nice, although it's a little bit on the low resolution side. There's something that I really like about um, the sort of the pixie quality of it. Um, Her hair makes this really wonderful shape um, that feels very dynamic. And actually, I was tempted to do the full figure version of this because her hand gesture and her body gesture too are also very interesting. But I did want to focus in on her face, the expression, and the underlighting. And I'm jumping in right here, getting kind of a quick drawing down. I'm going to have to go in and um, once I guess about where everything is, I'm going to have to do a little bit of measuring to make sure that I'm close to the right proportion. And I think maybe out of just practice, I try to just eyeball it at first to see how close I can get. And then often I'm surprised about how far off I am, but I guess the more I try to eyeball it, the better I get um, at knowing where I tend to be off and compensate a little bit for that. If you're, I see there's a few people who've joined us now, so I always like to know where you're watching from. So if you feel like it, just write in the comment discussion where you're watching from, and I'd like to say hi to you. Okay. Also, let me know if the sound quality is good, if the lighting's good, and all of that stuff. I hope I don't have any technical difficulties tonight. I think my router's on the last leg. I do have a new router that I've just ordered. I just haven't had a chance to kick everybody off their Wi-Fi to um, to get the new one set up. That's going to be a little bit of a painful process. I was hoping to find a time when everyone's not home, but the new router should improve the quality of my demos because I won't have quite as many dropouts. Let me see if I can do this without moving the phone. Okay, where do I want to measure from? The top of the eyebrow. That's pretty good. The side of her forehead. I have to come over a little bit. Get to the bottom of her chin. Pretty secure that my photo is the right measurement. That's not too far off here. Then I'm going to measure where the center line is on the chin too to make sure I'm coming down in the right place. So that's right about there. So her cheek is actually staying out a little bit further and then coming in. Like I said, this photo is a little bit on the low resolution side, which is kind of a blessing and a curse. I don't have quite as much reference information to work from, but I can also play around more with letting the brush work have a little more interest than trying to get all the textures and landmarks in her face. It does require that I do a little bit more um, uh, how do I describe it? A little more guessing about where the anatomy is in her face and doing just more of a little bit of a mental workout, trying to figure out, trying to paint with anatomy that I don't see, but based on what I know should be there. So that's always a good exercise. It means that I have to rely on all the information that I've learned over the years. Okay, that seems to be pretty good. Let's see, the tip of her ear. It's out about here. I see, yeah, Randy's here. Hi, Randy. If I remember correctly, from Washington. And the ear, let me measure again. Off a little bit there. So as I mentioned before, I have this brand new monitor. It tilts vertically or swivels vertically. That allows me to do larger vertical portraits that I can see the whole thing on the monitor. So what you see there is the full 16-inch height of the image. It's only taking up about 3/4 of the total height of the monitor. So I probably can get a good 11 by or 14 by 18 painting on here without a problem. I was working on a 18 by 24-inch painting with this monitor the other day, and it was great because I could get the full height of the painting in and most of the width of it, and so that really helps speed things along quite a bit. Okay, get another measurement here. The hair here, then the eyebrow is coming right about there, stopping. Okay, let's see if I get that measurement. That's good. And then the other eyebrow. Okay, I need to paint out the side of the face, which means the where I drew it incorrectly, just to help me visualize it. So I have to make a choice about what color I want the background. And the background's pretty gray, but I think I want to push it a little bit of a kind of a turquoise, subtle turquoise color, very light. So the color is kind of a little more subtle, but this has quite a bit of color in it right now, which is fine. I can um, gray it up a little bit later if I decide to. And the overall theme, I wanted to play with the rose colors that are in her, in the very pale color in her skin against the very dark black um, silhouette of both her her blouse and her hair, um, including her eyebrows and her eyes are very dark, even though there's a little bit of blue in them. So I want to all those features. I want to go very dark so that it becomes a very graphic sort of painting. Play with the silhouette here. Coming around the ear, something like that. Okay, so I can start to see this, the jawline I have off a little bit here, and then her chin is tilted slightly. Okay, let's continue to measure a little bit. It's not bad. This measurement might be off a little bit. It is slightly. It should be out about here. Let me get a little bit of pink mixed up. Okay, that's a very warm pink. I also want a little bit of a cool pink color to work with. So I have my Naphtha red, which is the warm pink, Naphtha red with white, and then I have my quinacridone red, um, which is a much cooler pink, uh, very high tinting strength. So that'll just give me a good start with this. And I'm just going to go, I can either go with black or purple right now for the shadows. And just get a little bit of purple in there. So I'm seeing some in the painting. Just make a stab at where the nostrils are going to be. That doesn't feel right. They need to be closer to her cheeks, somewhere like here. Let me obliterate my bad guesses. almost white on the underside of her nose. She's getting a lot of underlighting, something like that, not too far off. And I can continue with that purple, gray, mauve color. And then she's getting some white coming into the side of her cheek here, and then coming side of her jaw, and then coming up into her cheek. Okay, and I'm just going to go with some pure red, a little bit of alizarin permanent and the quinacridone red, just to start on her lips. And I want to look to see what the slant is of those of the features in her face. They all should be pretty much aligned. She isn't making a very stretched or a stressed expression where she's pulling one side of her face or the other. So everything should line up pretty closely. Her chin, which feels tilted this way, is just, I think, an illusion because we're just seeing more of the round side of her chin, but the bottom is really down here. So I need to make sure that no, well, that's a lot of red there, but so I'd ran my brush from the lips, but I do want to make sure that everything kind of stays in alignment like that. I'm just trying to get the overall shape of the lips, and then I can make more of a division between the lips later. Okay, something like that. Um, Taga says, why does the reds dry a lot slower? Well, it really depends on the brand of color and the color red that you're using. Um, if So the question is, what brand of paint are you using? What quality of paint? Because you could be using a student grade paint or an artist grade paint, and each one of those will have different qualities. My reds don't necessarily dry so slowly, but I'm finding the black that I'm using now dries very slowly. So where I put a lot of black in someone's hair, I may have to wait over a week for those blacks to dry completely, which is a little bit hard because some of these paintings I do have to ship within a week of completing them. So I may have to rethink the black that I'm using or add a medium that helps with the drying, with the dry time. So I'm going to move that shadow on her nose. I need to move it out just a little bit further. Got a little bit too much white in that to be convincing as a shadow. So there we go. While I have that shadow color there, I'm just going to take another stab at that nostril. And I'm using a pretty big brush here. It's not really slowing me down too much. Like I said, there's not a lot of detail in this photo. I'm doing a lot of guesswork, but it doesn't hurt to use a bigger brush than you need. It helps keep the painting fresh looking and helps show off the brushwork a little bit more. And then you learn to make some detail with a larger brush by putting down a larger stroke and then carving into it with um, from one side or the other using the same large brush. Okay, and the tip of the nose is only going to seem light if I get some darks in around it. So that's what I'm going to start to do here. There's a little bit of red in that shadow. Not really going dark enough there yet. Let's try that again. There we go. So, and there's a point where I need to start squinting too to make sure that I'm getting the right values and colors and I'm painting things in the right place. Okay, let's give her a little bit of her eye. It's right around here. Well, more over. Okay, and I'm just going to do a quick measurement before I get too far on that. Top of the eye. Oh, sorry about that. So I need to come down lower. Okay, let's try that again. Something like that, I think. Okay, let's expand her nose a little bit more to the side. So I'm just saying that because when I compare, I'm seeing where things are off by a little bit, and I'm just can this stage of the painting, it's real easy to move things around. Haven't really committed too strongly for at any part of her face yet, so you can just add a stroke or two and move things over. It's not that hard. Shadow on top of her nose because of the underlighting, and then working around the anatomy of her nose, trying to get a little bit of the dimension of it going. See if I can get that hit of white that's right here. Something like that. So I'm going to darken just on the top of the tip of her nose, goes a bit darker, and then before it gets lighter up here on the bridge of her nose. Okay. I'm going kind of slow at this point, but it will start to go faster as I get more of the detail in. Okay, and I have to bring that eyebrow down a little bit, it feels like. Top of the eyebrow. Yep. Sorry, I keep on bumping the phone. I hope it doesn't make you guys too dizzy. Something more like that for that eyebrow, which means the other one also should be a little bit lower. Something like that. And then I'm going to lower her hairline. I'll do another measurement just to make sure, but a lot of black paint on the brush. That will never dry. So something like that. I got a little too thin with the paint there. You can see that it's almost like watercolor, and so I'm thickening it up a little bit. Want it more like the consistency of cream so that it goes down easily and then I can paint into it easily. But there needs to be enough paint there to work into, and ideally you want the paint to be a little bit thicker so that the binder is not falling apart, essentially keeping the painting healthy. Because if the binder in the paint gets too thin and too stretched, you're not really creating a strong film, which which will hold together over long periods of time. Without enough binder, then your paint essentially will turn to dust, and eventually that can affect the longevity of the painting. Okay, kind of gave her mad eyebrows, but I will um, soften those up a little bit. Mad eyebrows meaning that they're pushed down too hard in the middle of her towards her nose, and it makes her expression seem very angry. And by adjusting them so that they're not so low on the ends and a little bit lower towards the middle and the far ends, then that will soften up the expression a little. Bring that side up a little, bring this side down. Okay. The, her philtrum, that center groove in her nose, to be out further this way. So again, modifying that. Reshaping her mouth a little bit. And then I'm going to come in with a little bit of that alizarin permanent, which is great for the separation between the lips or where the lips are pushed together. Okay. Yeah, I have a lot of adjusting to do as I go. I can kind of feel the drawing is off a little bit, but if I just make subtle adjustments with each pass of the paint, then it does start to pull into line. And pull down this side of the mouth a little bit, got too high. And then this side needs to come down a little bit lower. Remember, I want to keep those horizontal um, horizontal lines for the different features in the face. I want to make sure that they stay parallel. Okay, and I'm going to try to fill in some of the rest of her flesh tones as I go. Okay, gonna restate that white that's coming into her jawline there. Again, it's underlit situation here. I haven't done too many underlit paintings, so it's kind of good to have to do one now and again. They tend to have a real dramatic quality to them, either looking spooky or can look, um, I think in this case, just looking a little more exotic. At some point I'll have to switch to a little bit smaller brush to do a little bit of refining. Not quite there yet, but getting close. I've started to use a little bit of safflower oil as a painting medium. It just gives me a little bit more fluidness, if that's the right word. A little bit more flow to the paint than um, just using Gamsol. Gamsol isn't really a medium per se. It's a solvent, and so a medium stays as part of your painting, whereas a solvent just evaporates and just leaves the paint. So in that way, it's not a true medium. I want to soften up this edge a little bit. It's as the side of her head moves into shadow. Let's carve into the eyebrows still, something like that. Let's narrow up her nose a little. Just continuing to compare to the photo resource. You're probably seeing the photo a little bit differently than I am because it's on a monitor. Depending on how much light I have on objects shined around it, that image on the monitor is going to change color and value. So um, it doesn't change so much for me just looking at it, but sometimes it is a little hard to match the colors on a monitor because they do visually change depending on um, what angle you're looking at it and how much light there is in the room. Okay, well I am giving her too much cheek jaw there, so I'm going to have to pull that in a little bit. And I need to make her eye a little bit bigger here. So this is a real complicated little spot right here in the face between the eyelid, where the eye is coming in, and the eyelashes, the angle, then the turn of the nose. It's all happening in this one little spot. It can be real easy to kind of get all that wrong. Again, I'm not being very exact because I have this really big brush. Let me just take a quick measurement to make sure I haven't pushed that too far around. That's to the top of the... Yeah, I got up a little bit too high with this. Okay, let's pull it down again. Yeah, this is just real tricky, all that's going on there. And it's really hard at this angle to make it look like she's looking at us. This takes a little bit of patience to get the position of the eye and the eye socket and everything just right before you start to feel that um, the direction of the gaze. Yep, still too high. So let's pull it down a little bit more. And there's some light reflecting off her eyelid right there, so I'm going to try to get that in. That's going to help me get the right position, I think, of the eye. Yep, I'm much closer now. Okay, so this is where I think I need to go to a smaller brush because I'm just not getting the control that I need with that larger one. So I think I'm going to switch to a flat. This is a number something, a number 6, I think. Can't read it anymore. It's not that big, if you can see. Yep. And it has just enough edge on it that I can get a little more control over what I'm doing. I don't want to get quite too small yet. Something like that. And make sure I get the eyeshadow that's on the underside of her eye coming in. And want to get a little bit of the color of her eye in. I think that's going to help us here by going a little bit lighter. And I have a little detail brush here hanging out. I'm just going to put the reflection in her eye. It is kind of early in the painting, but this is just going to help me see a little bit better. And I may end up changing that as I go. But I just needed a little bit of something there kind of to anchor me. And then once I have that in, then I can kind of work around it a little bit. I do have to give up the smaller brush though. So now I can see exactly where this nose is turning. Have this darker red spot in the corner of the eye. Don't think that's really the tear duct there. I just think that's a little bit of a darker shadow that's going very red. This comes down pretty straight. She doesn't have a lot of change in the direction of the bridge of her nose. It's just pretty straight there. Just going to check one more thing. I want to check the distance from the corner of her eye here to the side. So that's a real critical. Yep, right on. So I can continue to work from that, just comparing everything as I go. Tip of the nose comes down here. There's a little bit of bluish color coming in here. And then I can drop straight down. Yeah, that's better. Soften up that edge. Okay. So I don't do this too often, but usually I'm painting sort of the big picture and then I'm slowly um, refining. And I think what I'm going to do tonight is, now that I have this eye down, I'm just going to continue to work outward, sort of concentric circles away from this point. I think that's going to work the best for this painting tonight. That way, just want to get pretty much to the finish of each area around that eye until I'm ready to move further out. And and I think that'll help me speed things along here a little bit. Something like that. So this requires doing a lot of comparing back and forth as I go to make sure before I go on to the next part that it's close enough to support the outer, the next radius out. So go a little bit lighter there. Then I get to redraw this nostril for the sixth or seventh time. Let's get that spot of blue back in. I don't know what happened to it. That nostril is more kind of a mixture between purple and black. And then the other nostril is not that close in. So I have to move it a little bit lower and just careful with the edge of it that it doesn't get too close to the other nostril. There's a lot of pink in there, this outer edge. And then the nostril itself is very dark. Let me see if I can grab that detail brush again. Something like that. Okay, coming back in and adjusting a little bit here. Okay, and I have to pull the edge of her face over just a little bit. Gave her a little bit too much face on that side. And it's okay to leave this edge pretty soft. It's fairly soft in the photo. And then we got a little bit of a dark shadow along the upper lip here. This is where it's blocking the light. And there's this really nice, beautiful pink in her upper lip. It's very cool. And that's pretty much straight quinacridone red and white. If I can get light enough and still maintain the amount of color that's there. And then there's the edge of almost a much lighter pink along the lip there. And her lower lip stays pretty dark on this edge, so I can actually add a little bit of black to the quinacridone red to get it even a little bit darker and more neutral. Okay, her mouth is just feeling a tad too high, so I'm going to measure that from the bottom. Yep, I should be really much lower there with her mouth. Let me get a measurement from the top too, just in case, with a longer brush. Boy, I really just keep on bumping into that phone. Really sorry about that. Yep, see where I am here. How is it their mouth is so much lower? I must have something really off here. Okay, so maybe it's the base of her nose. I may not have that low enough either. Yep. So see where I am? I'm almost a good half of an inch too high. Let me look at the lower part of her eye. This happens sometimes where I have enough of my measurements so far off that I really have to go in and repaint whole parts of the painting. So I know this has to come down much lower. I'm just going to paint that out. I haven't invested too much in it yet, so it doesn't feel painful. Just, you can't do good paintings unless you're willing to take out parts that aren't working. The wrong place, the wrong color, whatever. Just paint it again. It's not a big deal. Okay, something like that. Let's get a little bit higher here on the tip. Okay, just going to keep it very general for right now. And then I know the lips have to come down much lower. Something like that. And I can make the upper lip, that whole area of where the lips were before. Then I'm going to come in with the lower lip there. Hopefully that's going to be closer to where it needs to be. Let's get a measurement again from the bottom. Okay, so the lip actually, that's pretty close. Has to be just even a little bit lower. So something like there. Separation of the mouth would be there. And then, okay, pretty close there. At some point you do just have to kind of go with it, that you don't want things to be so radically off that you really can't pull the whole thing together. So sometimes I find that, as Marlo was saying, the relationships seem right, but doesn't seem to be like the placement or some other things don't seem to be in the right place. And you can then decide to make it work with where everything is. Let's come just a little bit lower here. That's probably throwing me off too. This other eye seems to be too high also. Okay, so I moved away from painting in concentric circles around that one eye and just, in a way, trying to get some of the more general colors and shapes in now that I've adjusted everything. And so that's back to my normal painting mode where I take forever to kind of get things in the right place, and then I do settle down and come in with much more conviction, much more um, com- uh, commitment in my brushstrokes. Sorry, having a little trouble getting the words out tonight. That's what happens when you switch all over to your right brain. Then the verbal centers of your brain are just, they just start to shrink away. They don't know what to do when you're trying to call on them. Okay, and just trying to get a little bit of that dark in. That's um, her part of her neck that's in shadow. So Marla says, getting the likeness is a total mystery to me. Watching you do it is a big help. Well, it's a little bit of a mystery to me too. I just find if I just keep at it where I see that things are off, then um, eventually some of it starts to feel like it looks just right. It feels like the person's expression, and it starts to look like them. Okay, I know some things are off here, but that's okay. This will eventually pull together. I'm pretty sure of it as I make these larger general shapes. Okay, made her, again, her chin a little bit too big, but that's okay. I think there's some paintings where I can remember repainting the jawline like 2 or 3 dozen times until I felt like it was turning as quickly as I wanted it to be, and it felt like it was in the right place. Let's get a measurement of her chin. Still need that to come down a little bit lower. That's what I suspected. Got a little bit too much blue there in the paint, so just had to clean that up a second. Okay, carve into that nostril a little bit. And then this one too. At some point I need to stop and get a little more white on my palette. I'm starting to run out here. Now this distance in here doesn't feel right, but I think I just need to get a little bit more anatomy in the nose. Keep on working down a little bit lower before that starts to read correctly. Okay, time to dig out some white. And I've been using two different whites lately. A um, titanium white, and also I've been trying radiant white. Um, that's this one, radiant white, which is a Gamblin color. And okay, there's about. It's funny. I just held that in front of the camera, and then I looked on the screen. There's about a 15-second lag too. So I say something, you guys hear it 15 seconds later, which is okay. Okay, here's the titanium white. I think I'm going to use titanium white here. It has a slightly warmer quality to it, and I think that's okay for this painting. There's no place where the color is so cool and bright. Generally, that would be the blues and greens mixed with white. If I had used titanium white with those, and I needed them to be very bright, then the yellow would and the color would fight that a little bit. Okay, wow. So these measurements are really throwing me off tonight. Almost makes me want to remeasure what I have up here. Let's let's see if I can get my ruler back on here. If I do the setup right, an inch should be an inch. That looks pretty good. It's off just a little bit. Let me just check my. Yeah, that's about as close as I can get it. There. I think the measurement here is just slightly larger. Not too far off though. Not enough off to make that much difference. Okay, so I just have to keep on measuring, make sure that I stay pretty true to that, and it all should work out in the end. Okay, back to work. I do know her. Need to make her neck a little bit longer than what I have it. So let's get another measurement there for the neck. So this is where her blouse meets the neck right here. That comes in much lower. So I do have room to make her neck longer there. So something more like that. Just trying to take off a little bit of that black so that it doesn't cause me too much trouble. Okay, just getting a little more of that background color mixed. So something like that. Get a little measurement here. So that comes right about to there. And let's use a little bit of that safflower oil to help me get a little bit of that background in. You can tell I put a layer of, I use Speedball Mona Lisa panels. They're extremely smooth. Well, they actually have a texture to them, but they're not absorbent. It's almost like a plastic coating. And then I put my own gesso, a layer of gesso on myself so that it has enough tooth and absorption to take the paint. And that's what you're hearing here, that little bit of roughness that's in the gesso. Let's get this far edge of the eye a little bit lower. It'll help me read this better. There's a little bit of, I don't know if there's shadows behind her, but something that you see here in the photo gives a little bit of edge to that cheek. This comes out just a little bit there. So this is the challenge of not having a great photo, is that you don't have a lot of anatomy to dig into, but you can kind of just guess a little bit where things are and try to make the brushstrokes themselves match what you think is there. And this is, there's not a lot of yellow in this painting, but you can see some coming in right here in the lightest lights. So I'm just adding a little bit of yellow to the white to get that sense of a little bit of yellow from the main light source. And then we have a little bit of gray coming in this side. I find the grays in the paintings usually my biggest challenge. I don't really see the gray. I'm seeing all the color around it. And then if I don't put the gray in, those colors don't really seem to sit down properly and feel real. And it's only it's the gray that kind of gives it a little bit of stability and a sense of greater sense of reality instead of just feeling overall like a big cartoon painting. So that's why those grays start to get really important. Let's move this outer edge a little bit. There. Make sure that far edge of the nose feels like it's turning away from us fast enough. Okay, so I'm about an hour in. I'm going pretty slowly tonight. I don't know how long this is going to take, but I'm committed to keep at it as long as you guys are interested. I'm just going to keep on going until I drop. So eventually this thing will start to gel a little bit more. Have light coming in a little bit more here, and then dissipating, and then it's moving into reddish. Then it gets pretty soft here. little bit black there where I didn't want it. Okay, let's fix up the edge of her hair a little bit. Something like that. Okay, time to dig into that black. Now the black I use is chromatic black. It's a gambling color. It is a mixture of phthalo emerald and quinacridone red. It takes me a while to remember exactly the color names for my dyslexic brain. But um, they're both very powerful, high tinting strength, transparent colors, but they're exact complements. So when you mix them together, they make a nice, rich, clean black that's highly transparent and takes forever to dry. So those colors in themselves probably take a long time to dry. Getting back to the question I had earlier, why do some reds take very long to dry? Um, okay, we're getting there. Getting the shape of her hair is actually going to help me quite a bit. Getting the overall sense of proportion. Her, she's got so much hair as the as the proportion of the photo in relationship to her face. And so without getting that sense of mass there, this comes back pretty far. Even her ear comes down much lower than what I have it. Let's fix that. Oh, got too much blue on the brush, and then I started to come into the face and it just went very blue. Just moving everything over a little bit too. The tip of the nose, the lips. I think that's right. Just needs to move over. That's feeling a little bit, starting to feel a little bit better. Oh, okay. Well, she just lost a big chunk of her chin there, so I have to put it back. Let's get a measurement there before I get too far. That's actually where it needs to be. And could be lower. Which means this one, how did it move up again? I don't understand. That one's right. So why is that one? Why is that one too high? So they feel like they're at the same angle. Yeah, well, What optical illusions? Let's just move this so it's pointing more towards me. Oops. Stop that. Go away. Okay. I think part of the problem is that my monitor isn't pointing straight at me. I had it pointed more towards the camera. Give me a minute here just to adjust things a little bit. Wow, this is a tough job. This monitor is a real beast. Okay, I think that's just a little bit better for me. Probably looks much more distorted to you guys, but at least I can see it well now. So, how is that so much lower? I don't understand. I can see this, her hairline needs to come up higher. That's fine. So, knowing that it has to be lower, I'm just going to start to move it down. If it looks totally wrong, then I'll have to rethink that. Corner of the eye, corner of the eye. Let's make her iris a little smaller. That will probably help me here. And get it looking in the right direction by changing its shape a little bit. And that means I have to lower her eyebrow too. I do. Let's get that puppy lower. Okay, so far tonight you've guys seen me paint stuff and then unpaint it, move it around. Not a very straightforward approach tonight, but that's okay. And I thought I measured everything, but apparently not well enough. Okay, let me just take a quick measurement again. There. Still. How is it still too high? I don't know. That just makes no sense to me. Is it saying it's somewhere around there? Look how much lower it feels than that other eye. It's wacky. Okay. Let me just, hopefully I have this thing at 100% or something. Yep, it is. Okay, well, which means if this eye is the right height, maybe I'm just not making it big enough so that it's lower, and I'm making that one too big. Sometimes it takes me a while to get there before the pieces start to fit together. Fun for you guys. Okay, I haven't checked the feed here recently. Okay, would making an outline of a printed face be cheating? I prefer not to work that way. I know some people do, but I like this process. It doesn't feel crazy to me um, to have to search around until you kind of get your footing. Sometimes it comes really quickly and other times not. But I like that process and I like the way the process makes a finished painting look. I think when you get into tracing, what's called, what a lot of people just call tracing, um, I think you deprive yourself a little bit of that discovery that happens. And then you also stop um, learning to look at certain things and measuring when everything is sort of laid out for you. Yeah, there's some skill still involved in getting values and shapes and color relationships right, but I think you also miss a little bit of that. Um, I know some people probably trace will disagree with me that would say requires just as much skill, but not always so sure. What I do notice is there's some artists on YouTube, and I won't name names, that do trace, and I can tell they trace because I can look at their underlying drawing and see the kind of marks they make that would only come from a tracing, which I don't think is bad. I think that they should show that part of the process to explain to people how they do that because tracing is not as straightforward as it seems. It takes a lot of um, kind of logistics to get um, what's on the photo correctly drawn onto uh, a solid surface. And each person who uses that technique uses either projectors or tracing or some other things. And getting um, getting there to the tracing part requires quite a bit of work. And so what I my problem with some people who do tracing is they hide the fact that they trace. They never show you that part of the process. They just start right from the point where the drawing is already down on a panel. And I think the problem with that is that number one, they not letting really know, they're sort of hiding something from their audience, but at the same time, um, it's a little bit of a deceit in a way that that they're, I guess maybe because they're embarrassed about it, they don't show it. I don't know, because maybe they'll feel like people will give them less credit um, for working that way. Maybe that's true, but I kind of feel like own it and show people how you do it, and so that when they go to actually draw and paint, they can understand what you're doing and make some decisions for themselves about whether that's the way they want to work or not. But when you never show them and you never explain to them, then you're just kind of leaving them in the dark. And that's the part I have a problem with, is that constant hiding of a crucial part of the process. Okay, let's get a little bit of the dark eye there. Okay, this is the part where I'm starting to need to get to where I can kind of see, have enough of the painting in to see the relationships and see where things start to fit together. And that's helping me a little bit understand why things are falling where they are and why visually they seem like they should be in a different place. Yes, eventually all this moving stuff around will seem worth it when I actually get it into the right place. That's just a crazy color to put there. Let's rub it in a little. Like I'm doing my Bob Ross here. Just take your big brush and put that color in. Yeah, I'm burnishing the paint in a little bit into the panel. So I got a little bit of orangey color here. Now that's totally off. It needs to have much more white in it, but it's good to have a little bit of that yellow orange in the base underneath the color. As that is getting a much warmer light there in the neck. Okay. Yeah, so yes, so Marlo, yes, the ear has to come down. I am eventually going to get there. Um, Here, I have a massive amount of red here. I can just put that in. Okay, so I'm painting just a very blurry version of what's there, which is fine. Has a nice kind of quality to it. You know, all of this is just my playground right now, just to play. This is the first non-commission painting that I've done in about almost 2 months. I've been kind of getting one commission after another. Well, that's not true. I did do a painting of Jensen Jennings, had that one thrown in there in the middle of all my commissions because I needed a painting to do on Christmas Day. And so that seemed like one that I've been wanting to do for a while. Had was part of my regular Instagram selection process where I had the viewers help me choose. I think, if I'm remembering correctly. But then I had to put off using it for about a month and a half. So I ended up doing about 7 portraits for Christmas for different clients, and um, and then had a few portraits to do for January. And now I'm, for the most part, through those. I have one portrait to start on that's that doesn't really have a deadline to it, and so that one I'm going to start tomorrow now that I'm through all my other commissions. Had a commission come in um, Saturday. Um, Someone who wanted the painting done as quickly as possible, and I ended up getting it done in 3 days, and then today I express shipped it off to Boston. So kind of a 4 day turnaround altogether, which was, you know, sometimes you have to rise to the challenge. He wanted it as soon as possible, so I figured out how to do that. Let's pull the edge of this ear back a little bit. Starting to feel it a little bit. The overall shape of the face and the hair. This is taking me a while to get there. Okay. I like how it's having kind of a photographic quality to it from all the soft edges. I can see how much of that I can manage to keep. Oh, well, that's interesting. That was obviously way too much paint and a little too heavy handed, but seeing it, that big white spot sitting on the surface, looks so interesting. Let's try to keep some of that kind of idea going. See if I can get another one here for the underside of the nose. Yeah, that looks great, doesn't it? As long as I can refine it so it looks right without totally losing it. Okay, now I can start to feel myself making much more committal brush strokes. I kind of feel like I know where I am in the painting. Yeah, this painting looks like I need glasses. It's so out of focus. Let me see if I can redefine this nostril here. Oops, that wasn't right. Yep, that's not too bad. And I do have to get the white of this eye much lighter. This may be the wrong brush to do this, but that's not so bad. pull the corner over just a little bit, and then redefine this other edge. Okay, now here's where we're going to have a little fun. I'm going to get very light white with just a touch of phthalo blue in it, but mostly white. I just wanted a hint of color, and I'm going to put that right here very thick. Okay. Then now I don't have any burnt sienna on my palette. I can get that with sort of other colors. So a little bit of orange with the quinacridone red. Get that very dark there. Kind of anchors that eye. And I need a little bit of a brighter red here in the corner where the tear duct is. Now, I'm thinking I want to keep everything very soft still. So anything that I put down, I want to make sure that I'm not putting too hard an edge on it. Okay, want to restate this side of the face here. So sometimes the jawline and the cheek line will feel off, even if it's in the right place, because um, you're not getting the third dimensional part of it. And so getting in there and making sure that you're getting enough of the elements that make the form turn in space are there really help it start to feel right. I know I struggle with this a lot, and sometimes that back and forth is unnecessary because it's back and forth of where the line is. If you actually have the sense of dimension right, then it starts to really fall in place. Pull that nostril up just a little bit, and I need to get a little bit lighter still on further down in her nose. And then she has this very light red. I think that's called pink in most languages. Very light pink that goes around the top edge of the bottom of her nose. Let's get white right up to it. And it gets distinctly darker. Okay, I need a little bit of a dark here where there's a shadow on the top side of her lower lid. That's going to help anchor that a little bit. Let's get the outer edge of her iris there. And the other side. Okay. Being careful not to paint that lighter area there. That's kind of going to end up being the blue color, being able to see the blue color in her eye right there. Let's go a little bit, repaint it. There we go. Pupil, just a tad lower. And then I'm going to throw in, I may end up repainting this, but I'm going to throw in that reflection. That doesn't look too bad. Let's be a little more convincing about her eyelashes. And then you can see I can carve in a little bit more right here. That's going to help her overall shape of her cheek. And then there was that mysterious dark shadow right there. Yeah. Giving her a little bit too much pudge in her cheek, so I can come in and carve a little bit. That's starting to feel right. I'm going to make this white come out a little bit further right here. Well, so this painting went from being wildly out of control, and now it's starting to come together finally. This edge of the lip still, that feels a little bit too low, but I can just start to move it around a little bit until I feel like it's in the right place. Let's go a little bit too light here just to have some fun. Okay, let me see. Um, Randy says, well, first Judith says, I would love to see your palette as you paint. If you look back in some of my earlier demos, I did a bunch where you can see my palette. Um, at some point, I'm going to get more than one camera. Haven't quite gotten through all the technical difficulties of doing that yet, where you can see my palette. Well, I'll shoot one of my palette and one of my painting and be able to compose it a little bit more, but I just need to work on my setup a little bit more before I get there. Um, but take a look at some of those older demos where you can see that, Judith. Um, Randy says, agree, hiding the tracing fact is cheating. So, and I agree with you there. I don't think the tracing is cheating. I think each person has their own process. But I think if you're going to be doing instructive videos on YouTube and you're trying to teach people, but then you're hiding part of what your process is, then I think that you're in a way cheating your audience. So I personally don't have that much against tracing. It's not for me, but it's maybe better for other people's process. In fact, the school, see if I can remember the name, the Academy of Florence uses tracing in their process, but what you're tracing essentially is you're doing the drawing from from a live subject matter, and then you're taking that drawing and you're tracing it onto your panel, and then you're doing the painting from there. And um, so that's one way tracing is used. It's instituted as part of their process. It's not the same as tracing a photo, but it is. They do teach methods of how to get that tracing down on the panel, and I think that's useful information, even if you are working from photographs, to show how you get that tracing down. Um, Mario says the mysterious dark shadow is the background woodwork edge. Yeah, I think I knew that, but I think it adds something or helps something, the sense of the turning of the cheek. So I'm keeping it there, even if I'm not painting in the woodwork. Um, it's almost like the light is bending around your cheek in that spot. Jill says, "Yay! I made it to a live session finally." Um, a hi from Washington State. Oh, well, um, maybe you know Randy. He's from Washington State too. I know it's a big state. It probably takes up three or four East Coast states, all in the size of one state. But yes, um, and Mario, it's now really looking like her. Yeah, we are starting to get there. Um, Still going to do some adjustments to everything. I can see things that are off here, but eventually I'll get there. And Judith says thank you. Uh, Taga says, "Wow, the likeness popped after all those those troubleshooting earlier." Yep. So I'm still not sure about the placement of this eye, but it doesn't look as far wrong as it did um, did earlier. Just gonna shape that nostril just a little bit. Don't even know which brush I have now. This is a round. I don't know how that ended up in my hand, but I'm going to get back to the painting now, I swear. Okay, so something funny still with the lips. It's okay. I'm just making little adjustments as I go, and eventually some of those things will eventually fall into place. And this nostril, see the thickness I have there of the edge of her nostril. I just have it about twice as thick as it really is, even though it doesn't feel terribly wrong. So I think just adjusting that little bit will help. And there's kind of a gray in her face right around that behind there, almost no color. So it's a one place, again, like I often have a hard time finding the gray. So I do see it, so I'm going to make sure I get it in there. Because that's the grays in her way, it kind of grounds the colors. I don't even know the right expression. It just gives them something that makes it feel like it's part of a real thing. And otherwise, the whole thing just starts to float away like a giant butterfly. I don't even know if that makes sense, but at the end of the day, I'd like to have a sense of realism, even if there's a lot of interest and color going on. But without the gray, it's a little hard to do that. So I have a little bit here too that's coming in, and then the red pops out again right here. For some people, it's getting those pure colors that kind of show up in a painting. It's kind of getting those to look right, or getting them clean enough, and that's where things get kind of muddy. I dropped her nostril, the bottom edge, a little bit too low here, so can carve that a little bit. And I want to soften up this edge. Again, I want to keep it looking kind of photographic where I have all those soft edges, so um, if I end up having too many hard edges, then I'm going to come in with a nice big brush and just wipe some of it out, break up some of the edges that are happening. Okay, and here's another gray spot here. Loving the gray. Right in there. With a little bit of this red accent here. Again, pretty dark. It's a little bit of an anchor there. And then I have this mysterious reflection here on that little spot on the nose. And it makes me realize that I don't have that nostril quite in the right place yet. It has to come up higher around there. There we go. Get that highlight in there again. Okay. Then I have that little yellowish light that's coming up in here. This is really starting to become the focal area of the painting. So I'm just getting a little thicker here in the whites, giving a little bit of texture, a little more interest. So he's feeling crooked about the mouth, but I'll eventually get there too. Now, now that I'm getting pieces are falling into place, then I can, the pieces that aren't, I can just slowly adjust those until they feel right. Eventually I'm going to get to my mirror, my magic mirror. Okay, where's my magic mirror? So I don't even know where I got this, where it came from. It's just this really cheap makeup compact. It's been through years of painting competitions, and uh, I must have had this for 20 years. And what's nice about this thing is that I use it to check my painting, the reverse. And how this works is, I don't know if I can get in front of the camera here to show you, but if you can see me in here, what I do is I just hold it at an angle um, to my eye, and then I look back at the painting with it. And what that does is I can see then the reverse of the image pretty quickly, and um, then uh, then where your brain kind of skews things and naturally puts one side of a face or an object higher or lower than the other, when you start to see the mirror image of it, then you can really see how off it is. And so that's it's really a great tool. I don't use it enough. I get a little bit lazy about using it, and that's too bad because it really does help make paintings look significantly better when you use it a lot. And So I highly encourage, if you don't have a little compact mirror or some little mirror you can use quickly like that, it really will help your painting quite a bit. In an instant, you can see where your drawing is off to some degree. It may not be instantaneous to fix it, but it helps you see where a lot of times where you've gone wrong and get things back onto track. So there it is, one of my best tips you just got tonight. If you follow up on it, you'll see. Um, I was watching a video of a painter named Morgan Wessling. He's a really fantastic painter. Um, does sort of period Western genre painting. Um, Not really the direction that I paint in, but I appreciate the work that he does. And he said when he learned to paint, um, his teacher really drilled into him using a mirror a lot. And he said one time he came to class and he had this mirror set up in his, or maybe it was in his studio, and he started looking at the mirror to check everything even before he started painting. You know, it doesn't really work until you have something down. But he said he started looking at a blank painting um, through the mirror, um, or blank canvas. That's how conditioned he was to use the mirror. Um, but so that was kind of funny little joke there, art joke, I guess, um, where he was overdoing the mirror. Anyway, you get it, haha. Okay, so I'm trying to get that feel of the length of her neck. So it's sort of getting some of these pieces into place, the angle of her blouse, the um, where the collarbone comes in. It really gives it that sense, that a little bit of elongated sense. I had a teacher who said, I don't know if this is true or not, but he said that women's necks seem a little bit longer because of the angles of their collarbones. Um, the way they slope down a little bit more makes the neck seem longer. I don't know if that's true. I think maybe just um, some women tend to be a little bit more delicate, have thinner necks, and that may make their necks seem longer too. Okay, let's start to get the background in the other side so I can um, start to correct some of the silhouette on that side. Ooh, that's too dark. Too bright, too dark. Well, I'm going to have to work a little bit on that. So probably something like that. This just feels too thin in here. So I may have to move this line out a little bit further. I think that's where I have to go with that to get um, the right gesture. It's just I'm just jumping around a little bit. I want to get a little bit of her. I don't want to call them sideburns. They're not exactly sideburns, but where her hair comes down, and then she's got quite a bit of red. My brush is not cooperating quite yet there. Okay. So you can see her hair really gives her, adds to the angularity of her face, because you have this line of the hair going this way, which sort of follows the one side of her face, and then you have her jawline and then the hair following this angle, and then it's just curved a little bit slightly more vertical there, but it does give kind of this triangular shape overall. So I want to make sure I don't lose that because that creates a lot of interest. And part of it's just sort of accidental, but it's sort of what gives this photo a particular bit of charm. What I said was sort of pixie-ish, and it's that angularity of it that um, makes it kind of more so. Even the way her hair is cropping her ear, giving it a little bit sense of not quite pointiness, but just um, sort of accentuating that angular feeling. Okay, here's another place where I have a little bit of gray running in here in the sort of violet gray color. Let's get the proper amount of lights in here. So you can see here, there's sort of the pinkish color in her cheek. There's a little bit more red in the hollow of her cheek. That's going to help. Now, I've gotten enough paint here and pretty burnished in that it's making it a little bit smooth, so it's hard since there isn't a whole lot of tooth there to grab the paint. So I may have to start coming in eventually a little thicker. But what I was about to say is you have the reddish here, the hollow of the cheek, and coming down a little bit. You have a little bit light coming in. And then you do have it sort of this grayish area, and then it gets darker. And all that is helping you work around the form so you can see the dimension here. And this is where I'm coming in a little bit darker. Need to go a little bit redder there. So get just a tad more red in there. And then it sort of stays kind of grayish, greenish down in here. Let's get a little bit of orange or yellow on the brush here. And that's going to help that the form turn. I said I needed to make the neck a little bit thicker. So it kind of goes to greenish gray too in the front edge of the neck. So it sort of blends in a little bit with the background. Something like that. Okay, that looks pretty good. And let's get a little more light here. Bring that jawline up just a little bit. That's not looking too bad. So we're starting to get a little bit of that radiant quality to the face where you feel the light coming, casting in from underneath, and the other area is dark enough to sort of support that sense of light. Some of these transitions could be a little bit smoother. Um, And I did say I wanted to keep things very soft, keep that kind of photographic quality. I'm starting to lose that a little bit as I'm defining things a little bit more, but that's okay. Um, at some point, if I really wanted to keep that, then I would just stop altogether, but I'm not ready to. So I'm just going to keep on going. Um, at least I have some of it on video. I can kind of look back at it later and go, oh, it would have been a great place to stop. Um, the wonders of video, yes. Okay, so I see I have the front of the neck feeling about right. I feel like I'm missing some of the back of the neck here, those darks as it moves away. I kind of feel like it comes up higher or something. Yep, that's about right. Okay, did I miss any of your comments? Let me see. Um, let me see. Wow, likeness really popped after all this troubleshooting. And then Jill says, "Nice trick." I don't know what the trick was, but oh, the mirror. Maybe that was the mirror. Okay. Um, so I could almost see it where if I just continue painting her blouse, get a little bit more of the her chest in, then I can kind of sit back and look to say, what does this painting really need to feel finished? Because I feel like it's very close, um, without needing too much more. Even little things where the ear isn't described, but it has these sort of great flowy um, colors, kind of gives you an abstract sense of what the ear is, without getting into too much detail. I think I can see leaving that, if I have the discipline to. Um, and just focusing in on the little areas of the face that just don't feel like um, they're quite at the right angle, or there's just something a little off about them. If I can just focus on those and leave the ear alone, then that might be a great thing. I worked on a painting recently where I just had done a lot of the underpainting, kind of just lay in, just describing things, and um, one of the two hands, it was a painting of a young girl, and the hand just had a really nice feel to it, even though it really wasn't finished. And so I just decided I'm just was going to leave it, leave it underpainted in a sense, as a point of interest. And I know some people ask, like, well, why didn't you finish her hand? And I just happened to like the way it looked. It kind of made sense for me as a part of um, kind of creating more interest in the painting. It reminded me a little bit of a Velasquez painting of a seamstress in a way, the way he left um, one of her hands just so understated. And um, and it also made a kind of statement as a symbolic statement of the girl in the painting as being kind of um, not quite completely developed as a woman too, as because of her youth, that the hand was kind of mimicking that idea. Let's see if I can continue to create the sense of spatialness of the underside of the nose. It's really is feeling like the most what is the word? It's the most dimensional part of the painting right now, and it's really coming forward. And so I just wanted to add a little bit there, just keep it closer to the reference so that it really feels quite real. Okay, just finding the mouth here a little bit, just like painting into the edge, trying to keep it pretty soft too. just going to lighten this area up a little bit, again, to help accentuate that feeling of light coming up into the face without getting crazy with it. Okay, I like that light that's coming in here. I fortunately made it a little bit too green. It's picking up the colors from the background. I mean, the color of the paint got kind of mixed in there. If I really want to, I can kind of push it pinker. It's not too bad. And sort of let this area disappear a little bit. I think that's fine. Bring that just a little bit lower. Okay, I don't think I have to do too much more to the face. Just like I said, correcting little things, but I have to be very careful that it doesn't get overworked at this point, because it just has this nice sort of feeling of brevity to it. Do I want to keep that? This is like so much darker and not drawn close to the reference, but I like this swooping feeling of the paint, so I think I might just leave that. Okay, so here I want this to be softer, this transition. And then I said I'm going to come in and I'm going to paint get the rest of her chest and neck in here. This is sort of a purpley red color, this shadow. Goes really red right here. And then see if I can block in quickly her chest. Okay. It does seem sort of funny after how much I struggled at the beginning of this painting, how quickly it came together in the second hour. So, um, you never know with these things. The mysteries of art, right? Okay, so let's get this black in here. I'm going to get a little bit of blue or something in here to give the black a little bit of um, kind of radiance or something. I don't know what to call that, where you see the sense of light. Um, it's almost like a little photographic kind of thing where the light from the side of something kind of makes it lighter and almost like giving it a halo or something. I don't even know the right expression. So I'm just going to throw some ultramarine blue in here. That was way too much blue. But as I throw in a little bit of white, then you're going to start to see it'll make a little more sense, I think. The same this side a little bit. Okay, and I think I like having a lot of the background unpainted, but I think I do want the color to come in here. And I'm going to play around with the hair a little bit up here. I want this angle to be, I want to change it a little bit where the black comes over a little bit more. This comes right over the collarbone and then gets pulled straight down. Yep, that's about where I want it. Okay, and again, this has the nice underpainted brushiness that I'm looking for without really going too much further. May just clean it up a little bit, but I think that's pretty close to where I want it. So, need to be really strategic here. So, this is just a little bit too much brushiness, I think, in the hair. I'm gonna knock some of that out. And I'm gonna try to get some of those curls coming up in here. Don't have to copy them exactly. I just want to get the feel. And get some of the sense of dimension too. With the paint getting kind of that brushiness, the texture of the brush stroke that kind of helps lead the eye around a little bit. And maybe getting kind of a softer edge here. Let's get this up a little bit higher. Said I didn't want to touch the ear that much, but it does need just a little bit on that edge if I can find the right color. Light pink again with the light pink. So, really just kind of looking to see what this really needs. There's so much interest in here. Nice quality brushwork. The mouth kind of feels like it's still pointed a little bit at the wrong angle or over or something. I'm going to take a smaller brush and just adjust some of those edges just a little bit and give a little bit more um, depth to the lips. Maybe even get a little bit of black or purple with red to kind of get a little more separation between the upper lip and the lower lip. That may be too much, but okay. And she's just feels like she's pouting a little bit, and I'm not quite capturing that yet. Okay. So let's just, I want this shadow that's on the lower edge to pop a little bit. There's a little bit of a camera blur color coming in. Let's see if I can replicate that a little bit. Let's try it again. Eventually I'm going to get it. Okay, so that's sort of what I want. Just want to get that shadow back in that's above her lip. Kind of purpley. It's not quite right, but doesn't really need too much. I just have to be careful not to mess it up here. Let's adjust this again. Okay, getting close here. Okay, now the lips are almost starting to pop here a little bit. It's kind of what I wanted. Just want now that that's where the lips are, I kind of feel like the light underneath the lips have to be a little bit stronger. And I think once I get that working, I'm going to call it a painting. Here's an excuse to put in much thicker paint right here. Okay. Now, does it really need anything? Yep, just right here. Okay, I think that's it. I don't really want to do much more than that because I'm going to lose the freshness of it if I do more. So I am just, hey Bill, just going to sign it somewhere, like right here. Okay, that's it. Thank you all for tuning in. It was an interesting trip this time. Didn't know where this one was going, but it seemed to have worked out okay. Let me just smooth out that edge a little bit. The paint got a little drippy. So if you haven't subscribed already, I highly encourage you to subscribe. So and hit the um, notification bell. That way you'll get notified the next time I'm doing a painting demo. I try to do this every Tuesday night, and I've been pretty successful, except for a couple, maybe 3 Tuesday nights over the year. So I had to miss it. Um, but so far so good, and you guys have been a great audience, and thank you for tuning